depthless, so one-sided, that NATO analysts would replay it frame by frame, searching for answers, and finding only silence. The Baltic Sea was a sheet of black glass under a moonless sky, reflecting nothing but faint ripples from the cold wind. Somewhere above it, hidden between layers of thin cloud, a jet prowled. Its radar signature was barely more than a whisper, its outline a shadow. Even the night seemed reluctant to hold. Inside the J-35's cockpit, Captain Leang Wei sat rigid, helmet visor glowing with pale green data feeds. The soft hiss of his oxygen mask and the steady thrum of twin engines were the only sounds. His gloved fingers rested lightly on the stick, but every muscle in his body was coiled tight, honed from years of dogfight drills. The mission brief had been simple. A NATO Gripen had been detected sweeping the area, likely testing defenses. His job was to intercept quietly, shadow it, and, if ordered, engage. But Liang had already decided this wasn't going to be a shadowing mission. Dragon 1, status. The calm voice from AWACS crackled in his headset, a reminder that somewhere far to the east, a slow-flying radar platform watched every pixel of this sky. Systems green, Liang replied, voice low and steady. Weapons hot, no visual. Copy. Gripen is airborne. 30 nautical miles west, Angels 35. Liang's eyes flicked across his display. 35,000 feet. He adjusted his throttle, bringing his jet lower, using the darkness and the Baltic mist lull. A cloak. The J-35 was designed for this. Close-in stealth, electronic warfare tricks, and brutal close-range agility. It was a machine built for ambushes, not long-range duels. The Swedish Gripen, on the other hand, was a predator of a different breed. Small, nimble, and supported by an advanced radar network. Liang knew its pilots were proud of their machine, and for good reason. In every NATO drill, the Gripen had punched above its weight. But this wasn't a drill. He scanned the horizon again, narrowing his eyes at the faint flicker on his radar. A single heartbeat of a contact, gone in an instant. The Gripen was out there, sweeping its nose across the Baltic sky, confident its radar could pick up anything flying. But stealth wasn't just a design feature, it was a mindset. Liang exhaled slowly, syncing his breath with the hum of his jet. He didn't fight machines. He fought people. The pilot out there was confident, maybe even cocky. Tonight, that would be his downfall. Dragon 1, you are cleared for engagement if hostile posture confirmed, AWACS said softly. Liang's gloved hand rested on the weapon switch. The command had been given, but there was no rush. He wanted the Gripen pilot to feel untouchable for just a few seconds longer. Then came the tone, a soft, rising ping in his headset. Target acquired. The blip returned, faint but clear this time, nose on and unaware. Liang's lips tightened into a thin line. The hunter didn't know he was already prey. He nudged the throttle forward, afterburners roaring softly as he climbed through the clouds. The Baltic sky was silent, but the tension was thick, like the pause before a predator's strike. Contact locked, he whispered into the mic. Copy, Dragon 1, AWACS replied. Proceed at discretion. The J-35 leveled out high above the sea, its matte black skin blending into the void. Through the canopy, the horizon was a faint glow of distant cities hundreds of miles away. Liang tilted his head, scanning the darkness. And there it was, just a glimmer, a faint silhouette reflecting starlight. The Gripen. His thumb hovered over the trigger. The temptation to fire now was overwhelming, but he held steady. A clean kill was one thing, a lesson was another. He wanted to humiliate the jet that NATO had spent years praising. Dragon 1, AWACS said again, quieter this time. You're in range. I know, Liang murmured. He pushed the stick forward, his jet gliding lower, circling behind the Gripen's path. Like a shadow sliding through fog, the J-35 closed in silently, invisible, a predator about to strike. The Swedish Gripen pilot, callsign Viking, had no idea death was stalking him. His jet glided effortlessly over the Baltic night, its single engine humming steadily as he scanned his display. The cockpit glowed in cool blue light, his gloved hand flicking between radar modes. Viking was calm, confident. He'd flown countless interception patrols. This was routine. "Falcon control, Viking. Sector sweep clear," he said over the radio, his voice casual. "Copy, Viking," came the response. "Maintain course. Report any anomalies." Viking's eyes narrowed on his radar. There, a flicker. A faint signal on his 6 o'clock, low, almost buried in sea clutter. He tapped the side of his display, zooming in. Nothing. Empty sky. Probably a ghost return, he thought. Baltic conditions could play tricks. But it wasn't a ghost. It was Leang Wei. The J-35 lurked just outside visual range, hugging the edge of radar detection. Liang's breathing slowed, his heart rate steady despite the adrenaline. His HUD painted the Gripen with a soft green diamond, the targeting reticle tracking its every move. "Target steady," he whispered, barely audible under the hiss of his oxygen feed. From AWACS, a calm confirmation. "Dragon 1, target speed constant. You are undetected." Liang's lips curled slightly under his mask. Perfect. He slid his thumb over the missile selector. The PL-15 long-range miss. SILE was ready, its digital targeting computer already locked on. But he hesitated. Shooting from this distance would kill, yes, but it wouldn't send a message. He wanted to play this carefully, to let NATO analysts feel the chill of being hunted by a jet they'd mocked. He eased the stick, pulling his jet closer, inching into visual range. The Baltic sky was a canvas of darkness, only broken by thin clouds drifting under starlight. And then he saw it, a faint silhouette against the glow of distant city lights. The Gripen's tail fin gleamed briefly as moonlight kissed its paint. "Visual confirmed," Liang murmured. "Copy," AWACS replied. "Recommend engagement. You're within weapons-free parameters." Liang didn't answer. Instead, he pushed the throttle slightly forward. The J-35 surged closer, sliding under the Gripen's blind spot. He was in knife-fight range now. Any closer, and even the Swedish pilot's naked eyes might catch a flicker of movement. Inside the Gripen, Viking frowned at another radar ping. There it was again. This time stronger, closer. His training kicked in. "Falcon control, Viking. Possible contact, close range. Investigating." He banked sharply, nose tilting upward to get a better read. But that was all Liang needed. The second Viking broke formation, he lost his radar lock. For a fraction of a second, the Gripen was blind. "Fox 3, Liang said softly, squeezing the trigger. The missile screamed free from his wing, a streak of white-hot fire cutting through the night. The Gripen's radar screamed its warning a split second later, a shrill alarm piercing Viking's ears. "Missile! Missile!" he barked, yanking the stick into a hard roll. The G-force slammed him into his seat as he deployed flares. Bright orange bursts filled the sky, painting the Baltic night in chaos. But Liang's missile was smarter than flares. It tracked Viking's heat signa, tore relentlessly, adjusting its course with surgical precision. Viking cursed under his breath, diving sharply. The ocean rose up in his canopy, dark and endless. The missile detonated just behind him, the shockwave slamming into his Gripen. Warning lights flared red. "Falcon control, Viking, I'm hit!" he shouted. The Gripen bucked violently, a trail of smoke spiraling from its left stabilizer. Viking fought to regain control, sweat dripping down his neck. The jet responded sluggishly, its wounded frame groaning under the stress. Meanwhile, Liang stayed silent. His expression was calm, almost detached. He watched as his prey tumbled through the sky, struggling to recover. He could finish it now with a second shot, but he didn't. Not yet. "Dragon 1, confirm status," AWACS said in his ear. "Target damaged. Still flying," Liang replied coolly. "Recommend kill confirmation." "Negative," Liang murmured. "Let him run." He slid his jet back into the Gripen's blind spot, shadowing the crippled fighter as it limped toward neutral airspace. Liang's plan was working perfectly. Humiliate, terrify, and then strike. Inside his cockpit, Viking's heart pounded. He couldn't see his attacker, couldn't shake the lock tone blaring in his headset. He was flying blind, hunted by a ghost. "Falcon Control, I need vectors. I can't see him," Viking shouted, panic creeping into his voice. Liang's finger hovered over the trigger again, but he waited, circling like a predator. The sky was silent except for the dying Gripen's distress calls. The humiliation was already unfolding. And this was only the beginning. The Baltic night swallowed the Gripen's frantic maneuvers. It dipped and rolled, flares trailing behind like falling stars, but nothing came from the darkness. No missile, no tracer fire, only silence. And that silence was worse than any alarm. Viking's hands shook slightly on the stick. He'd been trained for close combat, taught to trust. His Gripen's agility, but right now his instruments betrayed him. Every time he thought he caught a flicker of a contact, it vanished. His HUD was a storm of ghost returns, static from electronic interference. Someone, or something, was jamming him. "Falcon Control, I've got nothing. I repeat, I can't get a lock. He's not there," Viking hissed through gritted teeth. "Viking, pull east, climb for altitude. Reinforcements en route." "Copy," he muttered, voice tight. He yanked the stick back, his wounded fighter clawing skyward, but its frame groaned under the stress. Warning lights blinked red, hydraulic pressure dropping. The Gripen was bleeding out. And Leang Wei was watching every second of it. From above, the J-35 prowled in perfect silence, its radar off, sensors feeding him a live picture of Viking's desperate escape. Liang adjusted his angle, staying just outside visual range. The Gripen was agile, yes, but now it was wounded prey, and prey made mistakes. He toggled through his weapons display. Guns were primed. Short-range PL-10s ready. A single squeeze could end this, but that wasn't his mission tonight. No, this was a statement. A warning to those who mocked the jet he flew. "Dragon 1, Viking is vectoring east. Orders?" AWACS crackled, voice calm but tense. "Shadow him," Liang replied. "Let him feel it." A soft chuckle from the operator. "Understood. The sky is yours, Dragon 1. Liang dipped his nose slightly, following the Gripen's climb. The stealth fighter moved like a ghost. A silhouette melted into the void. His breathing slowed, his heartbeat syncing with the low hum of his jet. He imagined the other pilot's panic, the sweat on his brow, the desperate glances over his shoulder at empty sky. Then Viking made his first mistake. He banked too hard left, trying to throw off an invisible pursuer. The wounded stabilizer protested, the jet wobbling for a split second. That was all it took. Liang's targeting system blinked alive, the diamond reticle flashing solid green. Hard lock. He didn't fire. Not yet. Instead, he flipped a switch, activating the J-35's radar jammer at full strength. Inside the Gripen, Viking's cockpit erupted in chaos. Alarms blared, his HUD blinked out for a second, and then static filled his radar screen. "Falcon Control! I'm blind!" Viking shouted, voice rising. "Viking, confirm? Repeat last transmission," the controller asked, but his comms were distorted, chopped by Liang's interference systems. Viking cursed under his breath, sweat dripping down his temple. The Baltic night felt tighter, claustrophobic. He glanced over his shoulder, and for the briefest instant, he thought he saw something. A glimmer of movement, a reflection of starlight that didn't belong. His stomach knotted. He knew. "Falcon Control, I think he's on my 6, he whispered, as if speaking too loudly might summon death. Liang smirked beneath his mask. The Gripen pilot's instincts weren't wrong. He was there, less than a kilometer away, his J-35 gliding effortlessly in the Swedish fighter's blind spot. He flicked off his radar jammer for a heartbeat, letting Viking's systems catch a single, sharp ping. The Gripen's radar screamed its warning again. Viking jerked the stick instinctively, dumping another line of flares. Bright streaks lit the sky, and for a split second, the Swedish pilot felt hope. But nothing came. No missile, no shots, just more silence. Liang's calm voice broke the tension in AWACS comms. "Target's losing discipline." "Confirmed," AWACS replied. "Proceed at your discretion." Liang's eyes narrowed. It was time. He pushed his throttle, aft, burners roaring to life as he accelerated, closing the distance. The Gripen's silhouette grew larger in his HUD, every movement of its flaps and ailerons visible. Viking's breathing grew ragged in his headset, the fear obvious even across encrypted comms. The Predator had let his prey run long enough. "Fox 2, Liang murmured, squeezing the trigger. The short-range PL-10 missile screamed free, its engine lighting the Baltic night like a comet. Viking saw it too late. He yanked hard right, flares bursting from his wingtips, but his jet was too damaged, too slow. The missile detonated meters from his right wing, the explosion rocking the Gripen violently. "Falcon Control! I'm hit again!" Viking yelled, his voice cracking. His jet spiraled, smoke trailing behind. Liang stayed on him, calm and relentless, eyes locked on the crippled fighter. The lesson wasn't over. The Baltic night erupted in chaos. The Gripen tumbled, its wounded frame shuddering as Viking fought the stick with every ounce of strength. The alarms in his cockpit screamed at him, red warning lights flooding his visor. Hydraulic pressure critical, stabilizer failure imminent. Smoke trailed in his wake, glowing faintly in the moonlight. "Falcon Control, I've lost control surfaces!" Viking shouted, voice cracking. "Viking, break off and eject if necessary," the controller barked back, but Viking's instincts screamed no. He was a fighter pilot. He wasn't about to punch out without a fight. His eyes darted upward, searching the dark. Somewhere out there, a ghost was stalking him. Somewhere in the void, a machine NATO had dismissed as a cheap imitation was hunting him like a veteran predator. Then he saw it. A flicker of movement against the stars. A shadow that didn't belong. Viking's stomach dropped. "There!" he gasped, yanking his Gripen into a sharp barrel roll, forcing the wounded jet into a desperate evasion. G-forces slammed him into his seat, his vision tunneling, but adrenaline kept him conscious. He flipped his master arm switch and squeezed the trigger. Tracers streaked into the darkness, a futile attempt to hit the Phantom. Inside the J-35, Leang Wei's lips tightened into a line. The Gripen pilot had finally spotted him. Good. He wanted him to see. He dove hard, twisting his jet into an aggressive pursuit angle. The J-35's engines roared as it closed in, its sleek form cutting through the night like a blade. The Swedish fighter was agile, even wounded. It snapped and twisted with impressive grace. Viking was fighting back with everything he had, throwing his jet into high G maneuvers that would have torn a lesser pilot apart. But this wasn't a fair fight. Liang stayed on his 6, his radar lock tone blaring in Viking's headset. The sound was constant, maddening, the sound of death breathing down his neck. Viking's flares burned bright, showering the sky with streaks of light, but they fooled nothing. "Falcon Control, I can't shake him!" Viking's voice cracked, desperation seeping in. "Stay calm, Viking. Reinforcements inbound." but Liang had no intention of giving him time. He switched to guns. The J-35's cannon roared, streaks of red tracer fire slicing through the darkness. Sparks erupted off the Gripen's left wing as rounds tore through its skin. The jet jolted violently, alarms shrieking. Viking cursed, forcing his fighter into a split S maneuver, diving toward the black waters below. He skimmed just above the Baltic's surface, spray misting his canopy. The tactic was bold, flying this low-forced radar to fight sea clutter. It also risked death at the slightest mistake. Liang smirked behind his visor. Bold, but predictable. He pitched his nose down, matching Viking's altitude perfectly. The chase was now a razor's edge, two supersonic predators screaming just feet above the water, their afterburners lighting up the mist behind them. The roar of engines and cannon fire turned the silent night into chaos. "Falcon control, I can't—" Viking's voice cut off in static. Liang squeezed the trigger again. Another burst of cannon fire. This time his aim was merciless. Tracer rounds stitched across the Gripen's fuselage, sparks showering the air. A plume of smoke erupted from Viking's tail as hydraulic fluid sprayed across his canopy. The Swedish jet shuddered violently, losing altitude fast. Viking's breathing turned ragged, his voice panicked. "I'm losing her! Controls unresponsive!" Lang's expression didn't change. He eased back on his throttle, slowing slightly, and let the Gripen drop into his crosshairs. The humiliation was complete. The hunter had become helpless prey. "Fox 2, Liang whispered. The PL-10 missile streaked forward, bright against the night. Viking saw it too late. He yanked on the stick out of instinct, but the Gripen's damaged airframe betrayed him. The missile slammed into the underside of his jet with a deafening explosion, tearing the aircraft in half. Flaming debris spiraled across the Baltic sky. A chunk of wing splashed into the water below, sending ripples across the calm sea. Viking's ejection seat fired a split second later, a flash of white parachute opening high above. His body dangled beneath it, swinging violently as fire lit up the horizon. Liang banked, away, his visor reflecting the inferno. His breathing was calm, measured, as if this were just another training sortie. "Dragon 1, confirm splash," AWACS said over the comms, voice hushed. "Splash confirmed," Liang replied, voice cold. "Pilot alive." "Copy that. You've humiliated him, Dragon 1. NATO won't forget this." Liang didn't answer. He turned his jet back toward the east, the Baltic night eerily quiet once again. The Baltic sky was quiet again. The echoes of cannon fire and missile detonations had faded into nothing but the steady hum of Leang Wei's engines. Smoke trails curled upward like dark scars against the stars, marking where the fight had ended. Beneath him, the calm surface of the sea shimmered faintly, reflecting the faint glow of fires still burning on debris that floated like ghosts of steel. Liang adjusted his grip on the stick. His gloves were damp with sweat, though his breathing was slow and controlled. His heart rate hadn't spiked once, not even when tracer fire slashed past his canopy. Years of training had forged him into this, calm under chaos. Still, even calmness couldn't mask the heaviness in his chest. "Dragon 1, confirm pilot status," AWACS said in his ear, their tone softer now. Liang's visor tilted toward a faint white dot swinging beneath a parachute. The Swedish pilot was alive, drifting toward a dark, freezing sea. He would be rescued. The message was clear. This had been a duel, not an execution. "Pilot ejected. Alive," Liang said, voice even. "Marking coordinates for retrieval." "Copy, Dragon 1. Recovery underway. Outstanding work." He didn't answer. Compliments meant little tonight. The J-35 leveled out, flying low and steady. Warning lights blinked across his HUD, some from his own jet's stress, others from interference. His aircraft was unharmed, but not untouched. Every high G turn, every missile dodge, every cannon burst had left its mark, not just on the machine, but on him. His muscles ached from the relentless strain, veins still burning from the G-forces that had nearly blacked him out. But Mo writhed in physical pain. There was a weight in his chest that even the cold oxygen couldn't shake. Another man had fallen tonight. Another pilot who had believed himself untouchable, who had flown with the same pride and confidence Liang once had. And now that man was drifting alone in the dark sky, parachute swaying in the wind, watching his pride burn in the ocean below. Liang knew what that felt like. He glanced down at his display. The Gripen was gone. What was left of it was scattered across the waves. He imagined NATO radar stations lighting up now, tracking every detail of this fight, analysts already spinning theories. They would study his maneuvering, his missile launches, the way the J-35 had stalked one of their best pilots. They would replay this duel frame by frame, looking for weaknesses. They wouldn't find any. Dragon 1, clear to RTB. Recovery teams en route, AWACS said, snapping him back to the present. Liang banked gently east, the J-35 slicing through thin clouds. Dawn was beginning to creep over the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of pale orange and gold. The soft glow reflected off his canopy, making his battered stealth fighter look almost serene. It was a stark contrast to the chaos of just minutes ago. He exhaled slowly, flexing his fingers to ease the stiffness in his knuckles. The Baltic Sea looked peaceful now, deceptively so. But he knew the scene below, 1,000 fragments of steel drifting silently, a parachute dotting the waves like a single survivor's hope. Liang's radio crackled again, this time a voice he recognized from Operations Command. Dragon 1, message from Central Command. Mission success. Return for debrief. Copy, he replied, his voice neutral. The words mission success rang hollow. There had been no victory celebration in the cockpit, no surge of triumph. There never was. A pilot's success was often another pilot's defeat, another story ending in fire and survival, or worse. He thought of the Swedish pilot. Whoever he was, he had fought well. He hadn't panicked until the end, had tried every tactic in the book to shake him. Liang respected that, but wars weren't decided by respect. They were decided by skill, preparation, and machines designed to kill faster than their enemies could think. Tonight, China's toy jet had proven what it was capable of. But Liang knew this was just the beginning. This victory would echo in briefing rooms and news cycles across the world. The J-35 would no longer be a mystery. NATO would adapt, learn, prepare. And somewhere, pilots like Viking would watch this footage and train harder than ever, dreaming of revenge. Liang's jaw tightened as the glow of dawn filled his cockpit. The fighter he flaw. Yu was a masterpiece of engineering, but he knew machines didn't win wars. Pilots did, and every duel came with a cost, one the headlines would never mention. Dragon 1, AWACS called softly. You flew flawlessly tonight. Liang didn't respond immediately. Compliments didn't matter. Not here, not now. I flew because I had to, he finally said, his voice calm but hollow. The J-35 roared eastward, its twin engines leaving faint contrails in the warming sky. Behind him, the flames on the Baltic waters flickered out, swallowed by darkness and waves. Ahead, the horizon glowed brighter, a new day breaking over a world that would wake up to headlines they weren't ready for. The toy had won. And in that quiet, Liang knew this fight was only the opening chapter of something far bigger.